Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and whenever you have the opportunity to join me. I'm Dr. Jan. This is Russell Institute of Learning Sidebar Education, and we are looking at the tenets and the framework that has established Russell Institute of Learning. As many of you have known, if you follow me, this is really based upon lifetime of education and experience. And I was calculating it this morning, sort of knowing that I was going to say that. And I can't believe it. I'm approaching, if not at 40 years of lifetime education and experience. And then I said, well, I'm not that old. And no, I'm not. However, I started doing a lot of my research education right out of high school at age 18. So, and that doesn't even calculate some of the time that wasn't experienced. But just letting you know, I really believe what I believe. And I'm so thankful that I've had the opportunity to do research so that I can ground it in, as we are hearing so much about science. Now, for some of you, you know we've talked about what's the difference between fact and opinion in Born to Read series that we did a week or so ago. In the process of fact versus opinion, I said that I'm also including to my students that when we do research, there may be some facts that they're no longer true because there has been additional information. I'm just qualifying right here. This research is looking at right now progressive, because I know that in the world around us, we've been hearing the word progressive thrown around. And since that's attached to my research, it's like, oh, people are going to think I'm something. And it doesn't matter what you think. I mean, it does, but it doesn't. But the word progressive is neither good nor bad. It's depending on what someone has taken and done with that. So again, I have expressed that I am a pedagogical progressive. Progressive just means forward thought, forward movement. And yet then we can have all kinds of other ideologies that come in on that. So I'm just letting you know that my opinion then is based off of my research, and I have chosen to be a pedagogical progressive educator and have been so all my life. So let's go about reading a little bit again from my research, and in the description I've given, in case you want to go read in more detail or see the other parts of my research or the resources, because I'm telling you, when you do this research, it's years of research, compiling it, putting it together, so that at some points it is sort of interesting. But that's might be my opinion. So let's look at internal strain between administrative and pedagogical progressive education. During the early 1900s, two progressive camps coexist. David Labaree in 2005 described this coexistence as a tragic marriage between individuals that identified scientific numeration methods, which is considered administrative data keepers, as progressive, and individuals that focus their energy on developing child-centered, that's our pedagogical methods, as progressive. So they were both identified in the early 1900s. Administrative progressive proponents include, so listen to these names, because if you are in education, you studied some of these people and you made some type of opinion in your education and you went into either camp, whether you knew it or not. And then there comes this point where sometimes maybe we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and there should be a little bit of both, or some understanding of the other side, in versus saying, I'm only this or I'm only that. And we need a little bit of both. But most of all, in my opinion, and what I believe in, also identified in my research, we need to be child-centered. It's not about us adults. It's about us learning who the children are, where they are, what are their needs, and then basing their education around that. That's not saying we don't have a standard. Yes, get the standard where we want them to be. That as we are looking at the administrative top-down, telling us how to get there, that the pedagogical teachers really need to be able to have their ability to determine how we get there. So there's my big disjoint of administrative progressive versus the pedagogical. So let's name a few of who the administrative people were. Edward L. Thorndike, David Sneeden, Ross Finney, Edward Ross, Leonard Ayres, Charles Elwood, Elwood P. Cubberley, W. W. Charters, and Charles Prosser. Pedagogical progressives included John Dewey, Francis Parker, George S. Counts, Lois Meek Stoltz, William Hurd Kilpatrick, Edward C. Lindemann, Jesse H. Newland, Harry Overstreet, Sidney Hook, Harold Rugg, Goodwin Watson, James L. Himes, Wilford M. Aiken, and Boyd Bodie. Alfie Kahn in 2008 addressed the current and continued conflict between standardized and progressive practices. There is pressure to raise standardized test scores, and this again is where I come in. The standardized test scores, in my opinion, are not valid, because who did you get to take and make them standardized is not necessarily including children who have not been exposed for whatever reason, not of their fault, to some of the prior knowledge that would allow them to take the test and score at average or above. And that if they didn't have, for whatever reason, they score below. They are labeled, targeted, and left behind. And that's where No Child Left Behind came into effect, but I still believe it is ineffective. So let's read what Alfie Kahn said. There is pressure to raise standardized test scores, something that progressive education manages to do only sometimes and by accident. Not only because that isn't its purpose, but also because such tests measure what matters least. The recognition of that fact explains why progressive schools would never dream of using standardized tests as part of their admissions process. More insidiously, though, we face pressure to standardize our practices in general. Thinking is messy, and deep thinking is really messy. This reality coexists uneasily with demands for order. In schools where the curriculum is supposed to be carefully coordinated across grade levels and planned well ahead of time, or in society at large. And that's where we're going to stop today. Think on that. We are trying, in one of my blog titles, and I've got a few out there, but more will be coming. It is non-cookie cutter kids in a cookie cutter world. We're trying to push them and force them through the system at a pace that is not necessarily for them. There's some kids, it's great. They can go through, they'll fly through, they'll do great. But that's not, in my opinion and observation from history of my teaching, my experience, that's not the majority of the kids. Some are a little more fast, some are a little more slow, and there's a great big amount of them in the middle who, even when we're pushing, they need more time to think. Thinking is messy, and we're not giving them enough time to think. Just memorize it. Go ahead. Here's the test question. Know the answer. They need to be able to think. And if nothing else, let's look at our society. We have a lot of people who've come through our education system who are unable to think independently for themselves, know how to do the research, where to look, and then judge again, is this fact versus opinion? And is what do I decide based upon what I see, and having moral value to make those decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Russell Institute of Learning Sidebar Education. I'm Dr. Jan. Like, follow, comment, and share. And we're going to continue starting tomorrow, administrative twists on progressive child education. I'll see you then.